The first advice is there's a lot of conversation about, do what you love, follow your passion. And I don't really agree with that.
Welcome to Business Buying for Financial Independence. I'm Tim Delaney, and I help young professionals buy small businesses so they can escape the 9-to-5 and take control of their time, income, and future. If that sounds like you, hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Today's guest is Rick Sedler, an entrepreneur who carved his path through the world of publishing by buying and transforming magazines. Starting out in custom publishing, where you produce magazines for others, Rick eventually stepped out on his own, acquiring North Shore and luxury pools and outdoor living. Rick, welcome to Business Buying for Financial Independence. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Tim. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background to get started, about the publishing world and even before that, if you'd like.
Well, I'll start with the publishing world. I started with a magazine called Robb Report. I didn't know what it was, and I think very few people did, but it was a magazine. Essentially, we used to call it the magazine for wealthy living. So it was a magazine for millionaires to buy jets and cars and property, everything luxury. Before there was actually a magazine classification for luxury, Robb Report's probably 50 years old now, started as a black and white, moved to glossy, and my job was to sell classifieds in the back, photo classifieds. So I would call millionaires and billionaires and ask if they wanted to sell their jet to the right marketplace. And so after calling tens of thousands of those classifieds, I began to get pretty good at it and moved up to management and eventually ran it. After that, I moved to Elite Traveler. I was recruited to be the founding publisher of Elite Traveler, which is a magazine on board private jets. The only way to get it is to be on a jet. In front of that seat or on the seat, there's Elite Traveler. So my experience in 17 years of working at Robb Report, I began to help the team publish Elite Traveler, which, because of that niche of luxury clientele and high net worth people, I helped with that launch and then moved on to start my own company. And company is RMS Media Group, and essentially we started out helping other publishers with consultation and sales after they decided to start a publication, which I thought was an integral role in building a magazine, is get the sales staff in there to see if you can sell your idea. And from there, we did luxury publishing. We did, as you mentioned, we did custom publishing. So we built publications for others. And well, that was enjoyable, and it was helpful that they paid for the magazine to be launched. Most of them, on average, I should say, last 3.5 years. So you can do the best job. You can be appreciated and hit all the goals, but somebody in the marketing department says, we're not going to do this anymore. So you have to start from scratch. So we decided the best way to move from there with the team already in place is to start and launch magazines. And as you mentioned, we bought a couple of magazines and found out that somebody went through the legwork, the trials and tribulations, whether it was super successful or moving along. We found it was really helpful to find something that had already been established.
Nice. So did you start any magazines like these two that you acquired prior to the acquisitions? Or was it all custom publishing before?
No, we helped with custom publishers. We were the sales arm mostly. In the beginning, we actually created the magazine. We conceived the whole publication, and then we moved towards, why not let somebody else create it and we'll just sell it. There's a lot of hand-holding. I relate it to I liken it to a home builder building a house. If you ask any home builder, they much prefer to have a house that they built and then sell it and let the real estate agent deal with it. But all the little pieces and parts, especially if it's a big house and a pricey house, you have to deal with a homeowner. And there are many times when I'm sure there's frustration on both sides. So we said, you build it, we'll bring in the ad sales. And so we did start a magazine called Ocean Home. And that publication we started from scratch. And the others we own are North Shore, which we purchased, and Luxury Pools and Outdoor Living.
Nice. And so your early experience in sales really is what kind of drove the whole publishing world, right? I mean, sales is kind of crucial to the publishing world in the...
It definitely is. The statistics for a magazine launch that's successful, that passes 2 or 3 years, is statistically very low success. And I've seen people launch publications that were very qualified. They maybe were an editor or a creative director. It looked beautiful, but the audience, which causes the success of the sales department, as well as what it looks like and whether or not people think that you're onto something with it. It's all about sales. And so, I consider myself a salesperson, a sales manager, sales pro, if you will, that learned how to publish magazines.
Nice. So you mentioned you let kind of other people create the idea and create the magazine, and you came in and helped with the sales end of things. And you saw that from trying to start your own brand or your own magazine, and then you helped with other people's custom publishings, and then you went out and decided to go and buy another brand or another magazine. How did that purchase compare to trying to start from scratch? I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is there's probably a less of a learning curve on that purchase than there was trying to figure out the startup.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I found. I don't know if it's just me, but if I have to start writing something, it'll take me, depending on what it is, of course, but it'll take me to flush out, a presentation or a few pages. It'll take me hours. But if somebody writes it, I can very easily change it and tweak it and get it done in no time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I found with, in my case with publishing. I can easily look at something and find out what needs to be tweaked a little bit. And I'm not afraid to take on something that maybe is not really successful. The financials don't really look good. It's really about whether it falls into my category, which is luxury, or luxury lifestyle, whether or not my team is a good fit with my team, so that, they might say, hey, this is just another luxury magazine. That's what we do. We can do that. Whether I have a good editor in place, and of course, ask the sales team, can you sell this? What if it looked like this? What if we tweak this? What if we made it larger? What if we made the paper quality better, design better, increase the distribution, put the distribution here? You think you can sell it? So if I'm going to ask or expect my team to help me build a business, I want to ask them if they can do it. I want them to honestly tell me. And I think most people would say, that's going to be tough. I don't know if I could do that. Or, yeah, let's do it. And if my team says, let's do it, and I want to do it, then we're all in alignment. And I don't want to feel like I got something into the company that other people have to work on that are not really in love with the idea. Because that's not temporary. That will last for as long as they're with me and the publication exists.
Yeah, that's a great approach to running the company and making sure that your team's on board. It's good of you to kind of include them in that process as well. So let's jump into that first purchase of North Shore and how that came about and why you decided to go that route.
Well, I'm looking at national magazines. We worked on international magazines. We looked at specific magazines in custom publishing for exotic cars, 5-star hotels, that sort of thing. And I never really thought about local, except when I was at an event in Boston, and a magazine that had been out for, 30 or 40 years. Boston Magazine was there. taking pictures at one of our mutual clients' event. And I bid on a Celtics package, a basketball signatures from the players and a night out and a game. And it was when I was just starting the company. And I was watching my budget, making sure everyone got paid, just right past the point where I said, maybe I have enough money to pay myself. And so my salesperson came over with this basketball and a sheet to sign up to bid on it. And I said, $2,200. He said, don't worry. The people will outbid you. Well, an hour later, I heard my name called and nobody bid after me. I think he stopped trying to get people to bid on it once he got one, right? Once he got me. And so next thing you know, I'm in the magazine, and all these people from my local town, north of Boston, at my son's baseball game were commenting about how, hey, I saw your picture in the magazine. And I thought to myself, why are people from the North Shore reading Boston Magazine? And then, well, the answer is, why aren't they reading something else? Well, there isn't anything else up here, I thought. I did a little research. I decided I'm going to launch it, and there was a magazine available, or rather, was a magazine being published. And I called and said, hey, this is what I plan to do. I was very transparent. Have you thought about selling it? And he said, your timing's perfect. Yes, I have. And so we negotiated, a price to pay for it. Usually it's a one-time gross or, 3 to 6 times EBITDA. Usually those numbers are pretty close. I asked him if he would do owner financing. He said yes. Put some conditions in there. Over 2 years, I financed it. Good, because I didn't have any money. And he put a provision in there that if I'd missed a payment, he'd take the magazine back. Well, that's a pretty good incentive to make sure you make the payment and make sure you make enough sales. So here I was with a magazine. And the thing about publishing is you set your media kit, you set your publishing dates, and then you got to do it. You got to publish when when you're selling an April, May issue or a quarterly, a spring issue. Once you sell the first ad, you need to the first few ads. If you sold one, you could say, sorry, we're not publishing. But when you started getting sort of halfway there, there's no going back. You got to publish it. And if you don't hit the numbers to break even, now not only do I have to pay for it, but I have to pay to publish it. So didn't want that to happen. The very first issue was to our, I don't want to say surprise, because we worked really hard and we expected it would do well, but it was almost profitable right from the start, with the exception of having to pay for, the quarterly check, pay the previous owner. And then it just started to grow, just started to take off. And, we talked about, should you buy a company? Should you just start a company? I had already all of the advertisers that the owner had before, and then looked for the advertisers that maybe didn't continue and find out why they didn't continue. So that was my list that I worked on, of course. How many of the people that were in the book would stay in the book? And I explained how I would change it and how I would improve it. And most of them said, yeah, but the price will go up. And I said, well, yes, it will. But I'm sure you'll like the quality, and I'm sure it'll attract more people with better quality. So we're going to grow the circulation. So starting with that base, increasing the advertising, getting my team on a number of accounts. Because one didn't exist in our region, and because I would go after Boston Magazine advertisers that were on the North Shore and say, wouldn't you want to be in your area rather than reaching out into Boston? If it's called Boston Magazine, they're probably from Boston. So, I was careful never to really, slam the competition. I don't want anyone doing that to me. I don't want to get in a fight that way. So, I would just explain why this would make sense. And so, it really, you're going down the runway and you hope the plane lifts off soon before you hit to the end. And that's sort of if it doesn't take off, you're you're never going to make it, and it'll never the new magazine that you would start will never get started. But with a publication that you purchase, you have a lot more confidence that it'll take off. After all, I'm buying something that's active. There are already advertisers in the next issue. So I found that it was a big difference between starting my own. Starting your own, you have a yellow line piece of paper with some ideas, a Word document on a PC, some description of what it's going to look like. Never published a magazine. Give me your ad, give me your money, sign this order, and trust me, it'll be great. It's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's a massive difference when you have something already existing to build off of, which is one of the reasons that I advocate for buying any type of business. Is you have a track record, you have some existing sales, customers, staff, vendors, all of those things in place. And even if it's not the greatest operation, that's even more of an opportunity as long as they've been making money. I just want to back up a little bit through a couple terms that you threw out there, just in case the audience is not familiar. You mentioned 1 times gross or 3 to 4 times EBITDA. So you're saying the purchase price was about 1 times the gross revenue or the current money coming in for the magazine, or 3 to 4 times the earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, which is a metric we use a lot when valuing businesses. Essentially, it's what the business would be making if they had no debt or depreciation or amortization expenses. For different businesses, that EBITDA number can vary quite a bit, because for companies that are capital intensive, such as manufacturers with big equipment, they're going to have a lot of depreciation that you as the buyer may not have. So that's why we look at that EBITDA number. And then the other thing you mentioned there was that, so you were basically break even day one after paying the debt as well. So going into the purchase, you knew that after a couple of years of paying off the seller, you'd be profitable, or you're technically profitable day one, but after that, owner's paid off, you're cash flowing positive, but you went into it with a plan to grow it and expand, improve, so that you could hit profitability and extra cash flow even faster. Is that correct?
Yeah. I can't remember exactly what the profitability numbers were. I just remember how I felt when the first one launched. And, even if it was underwater, you get a really good sense, especially in this business, for what you're up against when you do your first issue. And there's a natural dip in the first going into the second issue. And I didn't realize that. I learned that pretty quickly. But when starting a new magazine, the dip is a lot greater. And that is that most of you canvassing, you're getting people excited about it, and they'll, take a chance, what most of them call it. And some say, no, I won't. Let me look at the first one. Well, a very low percentage of the people that don't buy the first one get it and then decide to buy it. They'll say that, but then they'll say, well, let's just see how it works out. In other words, let me see if you survive. So, the first issue, we were very positive about it. We felt really good about it. We actually changed the format. That was a difficult thing. We changed it from a lot of advertorial, which is writing about the people who advertised, and we really had big plans to make it credible. And we started a best of, which a lot of magazines have. And you can't really have legitimate, editor's picks if you're writing about everyone who advertises. So we changed the format, and that was tough because people said, I love that. That's the part I loved. And if you don't do that, I'm out. And other people said, after having looked at other books that we were involved with, what I did in my past, and some of the magazines that we were working on, custom publishing. So people trusted that, well, if you did those, you probably would be able to tackle this local magazine. So we went from 4 issues to 6 issues to 8 issues to 10 issues. And what a lot of people do is they I heard actually a publisher tell me when I asked him, why are you doing 10 issues? It's such a small market. And he said, well, the subscribers want more. I said, well, that's not a reason for you to, it's equivalent to adding more retail stores. You don't add 10 retail stores because people love the first one. Of course, somebody's going to want more if they're a subscriber, but that doesn't mean that you're going to sell advertising in each one of those extra issues. What usually happens is you get people that say, well, I like the 4 time because I can budget for 4, but now you went to 6 or 8. I'm not going to be in every one of those. So you have to sell more advertising. And if you sold more in the 4 issues you had, you would make more profit off of each one. So we waited until 4 became healthy enough for us to go to 6. And if those 4 are profitable and 6 become profitable, obviously you're increasing your business. We increased the distribution. We added paid subscribers, website and digital advertising. So the thing about magazines, a lot of people think that a publishing company is, years ago when I started, it was a magazine. You sell ads in the magazine. That's all you did. And now there's so many other things that can be added to a media company. And so we continue to add those things today to continue to grow and look for more recurring revenue rather than salespeople going out and selling each and every chunk of revenue that we pull in.
Yeah. That's from somebody that owns a retail establishment and gets approached by a lot of different publications to advertise. That's one of the first questions I have for somebody that comes to me with a print opportunity is, how are you bundling it with online advertising? What's your online presence look like? Says, I see the value in, if you've got a good offline brand, hopefully you have a good online brand, and that's where I'm more likely to get clicks and even just SEO optimization from having links on various websites, especially the larger publishers.
Right. And we leverage a lot of the things that we've created. And the number one thing is some of my friends in the business have advised me that, if you have a good, solid audience that responds well and appreciates your content and really likes what you're doing, they'll select how they want to consume it. So I love your magazine. And I remember having breakfast and somebody says, yes, I love your magazine. I get it. And one said, yeah, I got mine yesterday. And the other person said, well, I don't actually get the magazine. I just read everything that you write about. I said, what do you mean? Well, he said, I follow you on Instagram. When I see a story, I'll click on it and I'll go to your website. So if people are interested in, reading what you're putting down, right? If they like the nature of your content, if you're telling them about the top, 10 best steakhouses, or, where to go, to enjoy a summer afternoon, or a new opening of a store. Restaurants, we found, we did a survey. 99.8% of people ate at a restaurant within the last 30 days. So these are people that, we target them by the home value, and most people do home value and household income. But if your home's $1 million, you can pretty much assume that the HHI is high. So we're targeting homes, not people. And so we mixed it by controlled circulation, which means we'll mail it to the homes, and then we tell our advertisers, here's where the magazine's going. And then the ones we don't select, they buy a subscription.
Very nice. There was something else I wanted to circle back to in the acquisition process, was how you found this magazine. So you mentioned you thought of this idea to start a more localized. So for those that aren't familiar with the Boston area, there's the city of Boston, there's the North Shore, there's South Shore, Western Mass, there's probably something in between, but all of those, because Massachusetts isn't a massive state, Boston is important it's central, big giant city, not central, but a big city. So Boston Magazine was there, and it was servicing a wide area around Boston of what the rest of us outside of the Boston area would consider Boston. But what you're saying is you wanted something for specifically your area, the North Shore. You went out, started looking for it, or you were going to start it, and then you found that actually it's already here. It's just not doing as well as it should have been. And so instead of just starting it, you actually picked up the phone and cold called the owner. What made you do that instead of just saying, you know what, I'm going to just go for it? I've got the confidence.
Well, first of all, I made a living cold calling, so calling somebody and having a conversation was very easy to me. And I know some people that aren't in sales, that may have been difficult, overplanned, what should I say? I just picked up the phone and called them. And so my thinking was, when I did, first of all, due diligence, looking at the market, seeing what's out there, where are people spending money, asking people what they thought of the idea of a magazine. Would they read it? Here's some of the value that will come that I believe you'll get out of the magazine. And so then sort of the next step was, is there anything out there I'm not familiar with? And so I thought, well, if I have to ask that question, I already know I'm not familiar with it. I got to go search for it, but maybe there is. And then I thought, well, if there is one and I'm not familiar with it, living on the North Shore and being in the magazine business, I don't know where it's being distributed, but maybe if it's got something going for it, it might be worth scooping up. So I called, and as I said, he was eager to sell. And I think he had a number of magazines, but I think his plan was to build it and find sort of the next generation, somebody that'll take it from where it is, something that was viable, something that he locked down in a particular area, and somebody like me. So it wasn't a lot of convincing. And I think, if you sort of put yourself in a cold call position, every now and then you're going to call somebody who said, you know what, I was looking for a vacuum. And I remember a friend that I used to work with told me a story. He was training a new salesperson. A number of people I worked with at Rob Report went on to publishing, and some started their own. And he said, let me just make a cold call, and I'm just going to make stuff up. I'm not going to call about our business. I'm just going to talk to somebody, make it up, just to walk you through how it works. So he called and he said, I'm from MJ Schwartz Vacuum Company, and I wanted to talk to you about our new vacuum. They're absolutely fabulous. And he started to go on. This woman said, I can't believe you called me. I was just talking to my husband. I need a new vacuum. And he continued on with this made-up company for a few minutes, but he couldn't wait to hang up because he just proved his point. He was calling somebody in his test to illustrate to salespeople that every now and then, if you continue to make enough calls, you're going to find somebody you don't even have to try to sell. They actually want to buy it. Somebody's on the market for something. And sure enough, there are people that just say, yeah, like with this case of this magazine, this person had already gone through the thought process and decided he was going to sell it.
Right time, right place.
Yeah. And sometimes when you don't make those calls, it's almost like you think, well, thank goodness I did. Imagine if I didn't. Somebody else would have called, or he would have been more active, and they would have scooped it up, and I would have missed that opportunity. That's what I felt like. And I would have changed my tune if it was a disaster, but it actually worked out good. And looking back, and that was about 20 years ago. Actually, it is 20 years ago. It was 5 years old when we bought it. And so when we celebrated 20th anniversary, we've actually had it for 15 and 5 years before. But the magazine, it won Best Regional Magazine in the Country Award. It's won numerous industry awards for editorial and design, best cover, best editorial. So, and my design and editorial department, one person each, they've been with me for more than 10 years. Not because I'm a great boss. it's because they love what they're doing, because people love to do, in the case of publishing, people love to do something that people are always commenting positively about it and appreciate it. And it's a fun business.
Yeah, they feel rewarded from the comments and praise that they get from the awards, and I'm sure people in the community as well, which is awesome.
I mean, the boss should say, thank you, great job. But if that's all you get, and people, they don't hear anything about, the work that they produce, you got to sort of, like in sales, wake up every day and say, look in the mirror and say, come on, champ, you got to do this. But when you constantly have people saying, I love it, I enjoy it, it's amazing, and I went to this restaurant, that restaurant, it's a great feeling. So that's most of it. So yeah, we've come a long way from 15 years ago.
That's awesome. I hope everybody out there is paying attention, because Rick is here to talk about buying a business, but he is dropping some serious nuggets on leadership, team building with those comments there, and also on marketing in general, between his cold calling tips and some of the comments he was making earlier about content marketing, of providing people value, talking about things that they want to hear and read and see, whatever media form you're putting it out in. You don't need a published magazine to share valuable information with your audience, whatever your customer base is, that they want to hear and see, because then they're going to be drawn in. And whether it's buying your service or buying the classified ad that you're putting in that magazine, that's the value right there. Drawing people in with good content, valuable content that means something to them. Let's jump into the next acquisition, Rick. Your luxury pools and outdoor living. How did that come about?
Well, I kind of feel like I'm going to go over some acquisitions that came to me, and we moved through the process pretty quickly. Not all acquisitions are as easy as the ones I'm going to describe, but this one literally landed on my lap. The thing about being in luxury publishing and dealing with high-end, high net worth people, that's the audience. The magazine has to be, a luxury publication. It's that tip of the pyramid. There's not a lot of space up there. And general interest publications, if you're regional and you live somewhere, 2 states away, you probably never heard of it. So this person did some research and determined that he thought we were a good target to sell it. And so it was called Luxury Pools. And Luxury Pools, as the name implies, was all about the really expensive ones and the cutting edge design. And they had this idea that they were going to fly, 20,000 feet, whereas an above ground pool is 20 feet, And this was like a whole outdoor environment. And this was at a time when what they call fifth rooms, outdoor environments, outdoor bars and kitchens and all of those things sort of exploded, not just in warm climates. People that, despite what people in Florida might think, people that live up here and get 3 months of summer, they want to enjoy the 3 months of summer. They're not going to say, I'm not going to have an outdoor environment or a pool because I'm just going to suffer through it. They want to create something nice in their backyard because they only have 3 months of it. So the industry was exploding, and this person was, he didn't tell me at the time, but his health wasn't good. And I think he had a very successful main company, and this was one of the things that was sort of a division. He thought, well, since I'm in the printing books business, I'm going to launch a magazine. So it came in a package, a number of books that he published, a few issues of Luxury Pools, and he said, let's talk. I targeted you. I think you'd be a good suitor, and when I called him up, I was interested, but his numbers were crazy. He didn't have good financials. And so, kind of my style is, you're trying to sell it to me. I didn't call you, and I did not wake up today. I think I told him this. I did not wake up today and say, I'm going to buy a magazine about pools. So I'm not in a rush. I'm plenty busy, and but I do like it. But I think it's too much money. And even if it wasn't too much money, it's too much money for me to pay for it. So I don't think the financials work for what you're charging for it. You didn't really have good financials. But because I had success with North Shore, I thought, well, this is my next North Shore. And so, a long story short, it reduced down as his health continued to deteriorate. The price was dramatically reduced. And the thing about publishing is, there are publishers that publications and big publishers that just cancel the magazine. They don't sell it; they just stop publishing it. So that is a factor. And so when you do that, though, you have told all your subscribers we're not publishing anymore. You told all your advertisers, go find another place to put your money. And it's very difficult to start that back up again once you've made that announcement. So while it was still alive, and maybe it was a little slow getting an issue out, I thought, I've waited long enough. I gotta pull the trigger and get this. So we bought it, and I just got a shipment of back issues, and files were downloaded, and I had very little information because I made him an offer, and basically, I was buying the assets of the company, not necessarily an ongoing concern, So I thought, well, let's take the assets and we'll go and turn this thing around and make it. And I checked with pool builders, and I checked with the person that was the salesperson. I said, well, if I buy this, how much do you think you can sell if we do this, that, and the other thing? What are the problems with it you see? What are the things that you would want changed? The things that you told the boss he should be doing for the last 2 years, but he hasn't done them. Tell me those things. See if they align with where I want to go. So I made it conditional on her coming to see me. I didn't even have a pool. I don't know anything about pools. I know you hop in them and you swim, but I don't know. I didn't know this market. So we bought it, and I think that's been probably 7 to 10 years that we've owned that. And we were involved in the industry and went to the trade shows. And by the way, those trade shows are a lot of fun.
Sure.
The pool builder people, again, it's one of those lifestyle industry businesses where you're, dealing with customers and clients, and somebody laying down $300,000-$400,000 for a pool. That's a bit hectic and probably chaotic. But the idea that you're building pools, that's a fun business. And so dealing with pool builders and dealing with people that want to build a pool, it became either aspirational for those that didn't want the pools that were in the magazine, which were, $300,000 to $500,000. And for people that did want to build a pool like that, what they want more than anything else is just look at a number of different pools to see which pool style they want. How big is it? Is it a salt water? What's it look like in my yard? What's the landscape look like? So we provided that. So it's a half industry and half consumer in terms of the audience and the interest.
Interesting. So you're kind of double dipping on the audience of consumer and industry people.
Well, a lot of the people that advertise, let's say, for example, outdoor furniture, an outdoor kitchen. If they advertise in a magazine that goes to all the pool builders, and this pool builder's in there, not only are they in the right environment to be selling if somebody has a pool, they know that 90% of the outdoor kitchens are in backyards with pools in them, but they also want the pool builders to either use them or recommend them. So it's a good split between reaching the desired audience and also reaching the, potential retailers, or just for exposure and branding. So in order for that to work, it has to be the best magazine out there for us to target the most expensive things. So if it's in luxury pools, it's got to be good. That was our goal.
Nice. Rick mentioned there that not all deals are as quick and easy as the two acquisitions that he's talked about. The first one being that he made a cold call and the guy happened to be ready to sell. And to his point about cold calling earlier is sometimes that's what happens. He got lucky in the number of calls he had to make, but even if he had to make 20 more calls of that same nature, if he had a broader range of what he was looking to buy, that's not a bad deal. So getting out there, calling owners in industries that you're interested in, companies that interest you, and asking what their succession plan is, asking if they're interested in selling, or even better yet, asking if they know of other people interested in selling, because sometimes people are caught off guard if somebody is asking them to sell or if they want to sell, but when you ask them about somebody else, they feel a little bit more relaxed. And then the other acquisition came to him. So being great at what you do and being good in your industry, even if you don't own a business yet, just being the best at what you do could make you a target for somebody else to try to sell you the business, because they recognize the value that Rick brought. They recognize the success his company had and said, you know what, this would be a good person to take over our product that we love, because most owners treat their products and their companies like their children. They want to make sure that they go to a good home when they're done with them.
Yeah, that's interesting that I'm hearing. I said it, but I'm hearing it back from you, and I would say for anyone listening that listens to the story and says, "Well, wouldn't that be nice if somebody did that for me? Just made it easy." But if I really wanted something, if I were to buy a plumbing company, the fact that I got somebody interested in the first call, or I made 100 calls. If I wanted to buy something, I'd make 100 calls. But when you make 100 calls, within those 100 calls, you may find somebody that says, "Yeah, I'm eager to sell." And especially if you look at, situationally, what's going on. You wouldn't call 27-year-old plumbers that just started a business if they want to sell. You'd sell those boomers, that you might expect that going through their mind, what am I doing this for? Why am I waking up every day? And I find people complain for a couple of years before they do something about it. So you're going to call somebody who's been complaining about it for a couple of years. His wife says, "Honey, why don't you just do it then? I've heard you talking about this for 2 years." And his phone rings. That's the 100th call. That's the 50th call. So yes, it's a story about the way it happened, but I don't want people to think, that's the only way it can happen. The only difference is the number of calls I would have made, but the situation could have been exactly the same.
Yeah. And then you have that piece of seller financing too, which for your point of view of that tired business owner that is complaining constantly about having to do what they do and deal with staff, deal with cash flow and other things that we all deal with as business owners. Now with a seller financing option, as the owner of North Shore did for you, they're still getting a check on a regular basis, but they don't have to do any work anymore. And it's from a seller's perspective, it really can be an attractive thing. And I talk to a lot of buyers or a lot of potential buyers and even potential sellers who are at first put off by that idea of, well, I don't want, why would somebody just let me borrow the whole purchase price or some of the purchase price of the business? Like, that's silly. But it's really not when you think about it from their perspective of they get a check now. And sometimes even more than they were getting anyway from their running the business and doing what they did day to day, getting a nice check every day for sitting at home and relaxing.
You touched on something that's probably pretty accurate. Given the size of his publication, the fact that it's quarterly, which to me just, for readers, it's how many times am I going to get it to read it? For me, it's how many times am I going to get the chance to start and close a revenue cycle, right? And so, if you take the amount of money that I was giving him quarterly and he sits back and just takes a check, I pretty much guarantee it was more for the 2 years I financed it than he made owning it and working it and worrying about it. And if he's the kind of guy, which he was, this is what I was working on. This has reached a stage where I'm going to sell it, and now I'm going to be doing something else. I think your point of, not everyone wants to do it, but there are people that, would think it's pretty darn good that I'll get a check. And so yes, the conditions were right for both sides, and he's able to take a check while he looks for his next project. I think it's what I found also with buying a business is that people want the business that they started, and I think you said it, their baby. They want that to succeed. And so if you have a magazine that's visible and you brought it to a certain level, and my position was, and I wasn't trying to sell them on the idea, I was just saying, here's what I've done to magazines, here's what I've created, this is my plan. He was actually getting excited for what it would look like, knowing that he kind of birthed a magazine. And so where will it be when it grows up, when it really starts to flourish? What will it look like? And the last thing I want to do, particularly because he's financing it, is to have it fail. Then it's a magazine that he brought up to a certain point that he wanted it to really start to, blossom, and it went out of business. Then I'm sure he sort of feels a bit like he failed as well. But I can just imagine him right now. Maybe he'll be listening, Tim. What he's thinking when he sees it 15 years later. Not to say that he says, congratulations, you've done a nice job part. That would be nice, but I'm sure he puts a smile on his face and says to himself, I started that.
Yep. 100%. Proud parent. Watching his child walk across the graduation stage.
And so, I brought that up because that's part of it when you're talking to somebody that has a business. They want it to be successful. They're going to hand it over. They've spent every waking day making this successful. They want to see it continue. And most, as I described, sort of that older, I've been doing this for a long time, especially if you kept their name, they want to see it continue to be successful, even more successful. And, that's part of talking to them and having that person decide whether or not they want to finance you, or they want to sell it, or they're the kind of person that negotiates a little bit better than somebody that's either forced to or doesn't really like you. You want to have that transition and that whole cycle be as pleasurable as possible. And I'm using the word pleasurable. Sometimes it's not pleasurable at all. It's a pain. But in both of these cases, it was pretty easy. And the way I negotiate is I simply tell them what I want to do. I'm pretty transparent. It may not help me when I say it, but I want them to know. And then I tell them, some of the things that I think he would want to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's also important that you didn't let him overcharge you for the price based on your future plans and growth models, which I do see sometimes when, especially when brokers are involved with selling a business, that they're trying to charge for an unrealized plan for growth in the future. Whereas you had your price in mind of what you were willing to pay, you stuck to it, and let that seller come back to closer to where you felt it was manageable for yourself, which is important. As we move towards wrapping it up here, for somebody that's listening and thinking about buying a small business, particularly in the publishing industry, but in general, any industry, what's some advice that you would have for them?
So I think the first advice is there's a lot of conversation about, do what you love, follow your passion. And I don't really agree with that. Mm-hmm. Not to say that you can't find something that you want to do that you're passionate about, but don't work somewhere, really love what you do, and then think, I'm going to start a business. I've seen, friends and people that have told me stories about how that failed. Start what you're expert at and can make money at. And maybe you're not super passionate about, but if you're going to buy a business, buy it to make money.
Yeah.
And if you can combine really loving what you're doing and you're making money, that's great. But don't do it the other way around. Start a business, make it successful, sell it, or buy another business that you're super passionate about. But don't buy a business to follow your passion. Buy a business to make money.
I like that there is too much emphasis, I believe myself, on the doing what you love piece and finding something you're super passionate about. Not everybody's passions are things that are going to make money in business, and that's an important thing to keep in mind. Do what can make you money, and then do the passion project on the side after hours or after you sell your business, as you said. Do it because you love to do it. Don't do it because you want to make money doing it. That's, I look at chefs are the ones that come up a lot. People that love to cook at home, they will have their friends over and make a meal. They'll spend 8 hours in the kitchen. They love doing it. And then you throw them in, they decide to become a chef, or they get a restaurant, they open a restaurant, and they're miserable because now it's an everyday thing that they have to do to live. And it's a whole different ballgame.
Well, that's interesting you brought that up, because my next point is, and I've learned this because I was a magazine publisher. And so using the magazine publisher and the chef as an example, just because you're a good chef does not mean you should open a restaurant, because you have to run the business and be a chef. So what do you know about the business? And how are you, first of all, it's a total awareness. And a lot of people don't think, well, I'm a chef, I'm going to open my own. Well, have you followed the owner of the place that you work for? Did you understand his finances? Do you get the concept of, how much gross money and what your expenses will be? And did you sort of watch and learn and, be lockstep in understanding all of that? So you're preparing yourself when you open your restaurant. A lot of restaurants that fail, I believe it's because the chef thinks he's a really good chef, which he probably is, but he doesn't know how to run a business. So same with being a publisher. I said, well, I can create a magazine, and then I'm not going to say it hit me like I wasn't prepared for it, but wait a minute, I have to run a business of publishing and publishing a magazine. So, people have to keep that in mind when they buy it. There's a saying, would you rather have a great salesperson and an average product, or an average salesperson and a great product? And statistically, a great salesperson with an average product will always win. So if you're a person that knows how to cook and you're an excellent chef, you may not survive unless you know how to run a business. And what I found with a competitive magazine is that I knew my prices, I knew my paper cost, I knew my per issue cost, my subscription cost, my sales commission, everything. Like I watched a weekend full of Shark Tank, and learned everything about what I should be looking for. And this competitor was not in the publishing business. It's okay, you can move to different industries, but he was promoting pages that I knew in the business that he wasn't making any money on. And he's not alone. There are people that are actually out there working, hustling, selling for a price that, if you add all of those products up, will not pay the bills for the magazine or the business. And, people have to realize they have to know their numbers. So you want to open a restaurant, you got to be a chef. And more importantly, you've got to be a restaurant owner. And if you know how to run a restaurant, you can find, and you're good at it, you can find somebody. My dad used to tell me, Rick, there's always going to be somebody better than you. I didn't want to hear it, but, if you think that you are the best, which I think chefs and others think that way, you're going to say, well, no, this has got to be me. No, it really doesn't. There's other people that would take that business and rather take that role and do a really good job if you run the business. But anyway, you need to know how to run the business, not just excel at what it is that you've done to move you towards starting your own business.
Couldn't agree more. And that's, I think, a strong case, whether you like it or not, for partnerships, where sometimes entering into a partnership, especially, and you see that in restaurants a lot with a chef and somebody that knows how to run the business and the front of house and handles the different aspects of the business. That's what I do in my real estate business. I have a partner that handles all of the construction because that's not something that I am very keen on running and very good at. So it helps both of us since I run the business end of things. If I was going to launch a magazine tomorrow, I would probably call Rick up and ask him if he was still in the self-publishing game to publish my magazine for me and handle the things that I'm not aware of, or the unknown unknowns in getting into a new business. I might be the best writer and or photographer in the world and think I can put together the best magazine, but there's so many things that I don't know, where somebody like Rick could come in and point those out with very little time and effort.
Well, you touched on a really interesting point, and that is that, we talk about buying a magazine. Well, there's a lot of partnerships involved in magazines. There's a lot of people I know. I've got quite a few friends, and many times we talked about, you want to buy that restaurant? Do you want to buy this? So it would be forming a partnership. And so one of the things that I learned, not the hard way, I learned and it worked out for me, and I think it's really important for people to understand, if you do have a partner, and there's a great saying that I heard that I repeat all the time, if two people know or say the same thing, then one of them is not needed. So if two accountants buy a restaurant, what do you think that's going to be like? Number one, they're going to be fighting over, the same thing that they know well. And the biggest issue is going to be they both don't know anything about the rest of the business. So if I know somebody that bought a restaurant and he was an investor, and he bought it from a chef. So he said, I'll run the business. You keep cooking up that tasty stuff. And the chef said, well, I'm not doing a good job of running the business, and all I want to do is cook. So it's not such a bad thing to, carve up some of the business. Mentally you have to fight the idea that you're going to lose half of what you started, but he's in a much better place now that somebody's running the business. For A, he doesn't have to worry about it, and B, it's worth more, his half, than it would have been if he kept it. So let that person bring value to you and do things and be expert in areas that you're not expert in. And you'll both, in terms of a relationship, never mind the business itself, be appreciative of each other. Rather than constantly, sort of arguing over who's right over accounting or design.
Yeah. And that's why my partner and I work so well in the real estate, because we stay in our lanes. We don't try to learn what the other one is responsible for, and other than the basics, but half of a very large pie is much better than the whole thing of a little bite-sized pie, in my opinion. Yeah. Although I'm trying not to eat as much pie these days.
Well, I actually have an equity partner that I brought on early, right after launching, and so he doesn't want to be a manager, and he doesn't want to be a business person. He just wants to deal with big clients, whales, and just do what he's been doing, which is to sell and bring on clients and go to trade shows and have relationships. That's all he wants to do. And so some people want to do that until they evolve and they need to go to the next level. And, I've known him now for 30-something years. That's all he does. Now, I'm not going to say he's been doing it a long time. He's not tired of it, but he didn't want to say, why can't I do this? And I said, well, I don't want to do what you do. I've done that and I've evolved past that. I want to run a business. So I think that maybe in 30 years since I've known him, there've been 6 really kind of, we're angry at each other and have a fight. Most of the time we don't have to worry about that stuff because we picked the right strengths and needs arrangement.
Awesome. Really appreciate your time today, Rick. Before we get out of here, can you want to share with our listeners where they can connect with you or learn more about you or utilize any of your services?
Sure. So as simple as the name sounds, there are probably 5 Rick Sedlers out there. So, I can, from my own experience, tell you a place you can find me and you'll probably forget. What did he say it was?
We'll drop the links in the show notes as well.
A Google of my name will either get a chiropractor in Wisconsin or get me. And you'll be able to tell the difference. So it's, I do have a website, ricksedler.com, and I sort of post, my journey. One of the things I like to talk about. You and I met on social media, had this, I think, share of ideology, something triggered the, like and back and forth and that sort of thing. And that's how we met. And, I'm starting to spend more time on social media with Threads, Instagram, Facebook, not so much, LinkedIn, and everything. The handle is Rick Sedler at.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we'll drop all of those in the show notes below so that people can click on them when they have a chance and not have to accidentally go to a chiropractor's page in Wisconsin. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Rick. Your story is a great example of how buying the right business and bringing your skills to the table can turn a small opportunity into something remarkable. For everyone listening, if you found this episode valuable, please hit the subscribe or follow button on your favorite podcast app. That's what really helps us drive traffic and increase our visibility. And until next time, just keep exploring opportunities, asking questions, and find us both on Threads. Cheers.
Exactly. We'll be on Threads.
Thanks for listening to Business Buying for Financial Independence. If you're serious about owning your time and building long-term wealth, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.